I want to talk about a threat that I recently witnessed from a friend of mine at an MSP who has a very healthy cybersecurity capability inside the organization. You'll see in the timestamps from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., you've already got deep communication with leadership. But what started was this outside inside threat, and I watched an MSP stop this. This outside threat actor reached out and said, "Hey, I'm going to start calling all of the MSP's technicians I can get phone numbers of." I think it was in the order of 5 or 6 people in their organization. I may be wrong on that count, but it was a large enough spread that people were getting these things. And what happened was when they got on the phone, because they baited him, they said, "Listen, let's go ahead and take a call. Let's do a little bit of OSINT gathering or counterintelligence capabilities on what they're doing and seeing what they're after." And basically come to find out they wanted someone to compromise that MSP if they had access to systems, which is what they asked. And if so, they would pay them handily. Now, this technician got off the phone and finished up. I mean, this was with management overhead. I mean, they were all one unison team trying to solve this challenge of what was happening. They then started getting text messages. Now, from this Jenny, they went to a name of Lena, which is not even the same person, but you know what? It works out, right? And said, "Hey, I'm Lena. This is my work number. Are you free on Saturday? I want to communicate with you about cooperation." And we've heard about this, but this is the first time it's really hit home. So I just want to make sure people understand this is something you need to protect yourself from. If you are an MSP, you need to have a healthy awareness of how to report an incident. This would be an incident, at least something I'd want to report inside my organization if I was a technician, so that I could have the appropriate eyes on it and say, "Hey, this is a concerted effort." And the reason you think that way, and I don't want to be negative, is you have to think about this from the perspective of the one that doesn't tell you, the one that did have a financial straits or feels like they're underpaid or undervalued and says, "You know what? I will. I'm in. I'll help." And I'm not saying I've seen that happen, but you can understand humanity in that way. And so I'll tell you a story. I recently took an exam, and there was a component of it that you really just had to figure out. It was a network penetration testing exam, and I got a reach out afterwards from a random LinkedIn profile that said, "Hey, I'm stuck in this exam. Please help me." And they had some very specifics that told me they definitely were in the exam, and I simply responded back, "That would be unethical. I can't do that, but good luck on your exam," right? And as I thought about that, I reached out inside the forum for this particular exam and said, "Hey, listen, I just got this, and I don't know if I should report it." "Oh, you definitely should report it," says the CEO. And I come to find it's probably a counterintelligence play. It's somebody saying, "Listen, let's find out if we're going to have leaked information about this exam by just asking as if we were somebody needing help in that exam during that, and see if they want to be the hero." And I bring that up to say, when you think about this problem of how do you solve for people's home cell phone numbers or maybe partially managed cell phone numbers they use for work, right, are starting to get text messages and calls to say, "Hey, listen, we'll pay you a lot of money." And some of these organizations have offered upwards of $1 million, right? Could you imagine a 20-year-old kid that has full-blown access across the organization to execute ransomware, having those permissions? And so that brings me to the first fix. You should try to limit the blast radius. You should try to, wherever you can, limit what a technician or a project manager or a project technician has access to, and limit that breadth to only their principle of least privilege, how much they should have access to. That's a principal call to action, is do a review of your systems, your PSAs, your RMMs, your tools, and see if you can limit what they have access to, so when they're not a good actor anymore, and I don't mean that as if an insider threat or even just a compromised account, they now have a limited blast radius. So that's the first principle. But I have a more salacious one, and I want your information in the comments on what you think about it here in a minute. The salacious one would be, do you yourself or do you partner with another MSP start doing your own campaign to see how your employees would react? Where you say, "I'm going to send calls and text messages from Google Voice numbers or from other extensible platforms," or maybe even other MSPs partnering, as one of my MSPs I spoke with kind of talked about, but where you test. And you reward those MSP technicians for following your incident response plans and actually reporting it and bringing it to you. And if by the 1/1000th chance you have someone that responds in a "I'm willing to talk about this" fashion, you have choices to make. But you definitely can make some blast radius reduction decisions if that plays out. And I think the most MSP technicians I've ever met would never do this. I don't believe I'm casting a stone. I hope that's not taken that way. But I would say, at some point, do you run counterintelligence in your own organization But here's the way you can think about this is if you have a higher risk, meaning you have this unlimited blast radius, any technician that's compromised, bench tech all the way up to project tech or whatever it may be, has full access to everything, you probably need to be doing this, in my opinion. If you have extremely good blast radius and you're down to only the things that you can live with being compromised if it was compromised, you might be in a different state on this. So tell me what you think in the comments. I really just wanted to get this out, that there is this outside inside threat where people are reaching out and trying to communicate. The language wasn't great, it wasn't perfect, but imagine if they got a call center in the US that was doing this, or imagine if you brought this into a chat GPT to extract the very nice language for the script potentially. You could imagine things like that. So thank you so much for listening and watching. I appreciate y'all.